All right, 7 PM, you guys ready to go?
Yeah.
All right. Call to order, that was really puny, the Westfield Washington Township Advisory Planning Commission meeting to order for Tuesday, October 28th, 2025 at 7 PM. Staff could determine the purpose of the forum.
Sure. Mr. Neal?
Present.
Mr. Bunkfist?
Present with a smile.
Okay, noted. Mr. Khan? Mr. Horke?
Here.
Ms. Carlson?
Here.
Dr. King?
Here.
Mr. Mooney?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Woodard?
We have quorum. We have no minutes to pass. Is there any words of wisdom from staff related to rules of procedure, or can we move straight into the agenda item?
Nope, let's move straight into the agenda.
All right, we move to our presentation this evening. Floor is yours.
Okay, so who has the remote, or who's controlling?
Caleb?
Yes. Ryan, what do you?
The presentation's
She has a
already pulled
PowerPoint
up, it
open
just
down there.
needs to go into,
Yeah, there's a mouse.
He can hear you, so he's good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright. Oh, jeez.
I think you can also go to the slideshow tab.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is my normal shortcut.
Doesn't it have 5 steps?
There's lots of ways to do it.
so Kevin, you'll like
I can do that.
tab down or?
Yep.
Or, okay. So, thank you all for allowing us to come here and be with you this evening. As we know, Caleb sent out the draft document to several different groups today, you guys being one of them. But we wanted to go ahead and bring you a hard copy to tonight so that you can look through while we are going through this. Never go to the next slide. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna walk you through an overview of the draft plan and then talk about what we want you to look for as you go through and review this. And then we'll talk about, what are our next steps moving forward from here. So first, the process chart. So from the last time that we've seen you, we have actually now moved over into the final plan stage where we have created this draft. And now we will be taking this draft out to not only you guys, but the focus groups and the steering committee, who will be taking a look at that. And then we will also be having a public meeting later on in November. And then we will, in December, move into the adoption phase. So we're gonna just jump into the overview of the plan. So for the table of contents, we have an executive summary, which is under development. We always develop that section last. We have the planning foundation, which sets the tone for the entire plan. We have a section on vision and values, a section on themes and goals, a big section on the place types. Really, the place types, transportation, and connecting it all together are the core of the comprehensive plan. Then we have the implementation section, which tells you how to implement the plan. And then we have the appendix. We did not put the appendix into the document. The document is already 230 pages right now. But we'll work with staff to figure out if they wanna include that all or keep that as a separate document.
Cynthia, can I?
Yeah, please.
So remember, what you have in front of you today is formatted, it's in the plan format, but it is an 80% draft. There are things that we know are missing, there's a couple of images missing, there aren't captions, there aren't all of the cross references, nothing is hyperlinked within the document. So just wanna add that caveat to what you have in front of you today.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't be able to use the hyperlinks
Really,
in the
it's in
hard
copy
copy.
anyway,
But you will see down on the bottom of your pages, you'll see something called chapter tabs, and then they all say 1. When we get that fixed, they will each be the individual chapter, and you will be able to hyperlink into the different chapters or go back to the table of contents. So it becomes an interactive document when you're looking at it on the website or, you know, as you guys might from your own computers. So looking at the planning foundation, this chapter it has a lot of text in it because it sets the tone for the document. It talks about what looking to the horizon is. It talks about, you know, what is this comprehensive plan, being a strategic plan, looking forward into the future and regulating development, how much, where, and how that's gonna happen over the next 20 years. It talks about how the plan is implemented. It talks about what the plan is not. So we go pretty in depth about that this is not a regulatory document. It is not zoning. It's not going to change the zoning. It is a guide that will guide your decision making. This document does not have all the answers. It helps guide you to those, but it should not be something that is set in stone over the next 20 years. I mean, your current comprehensive plan does not do that. So you should continue to amend that as, you know, things come up, conditions change, site and opportunities are unveiled to you. We talk about the legal basis, that this is set forth under the Indiana Code in what we call the 500 series of Indiana Code, so 3674 500 series for comprehensive plans. And they have a few statements under there about public ways, public right-of-ways, public lands, and making sure you have statements for that. We have all of that covered in this plan. We talk about the relationship to zoning and the relationship to other plans. So there are other plans even going on as we're developing this. So the downtown plan, the arts plan. You will see as you page through the document that there is some red text and it says the downtown plan or the arts plan. That's because we do not know at this exact time what their titles are. So that's an indication to ourselves to go back and fill in that title when we find that out. But we want to be able to incorporate those as a reference because they also need to be guiding documents that guide your decision making. The comprehensive plan is that 50,000 foot level over the city, whereas these more detailed plans are at that 10,000 foot. That's really gonna guide in the exact details of what needs to happen on that site. We talk about how to amend and monitor the plan. That this, while you know this is a 20-year plan, you don't wanna let it sit on the shelf. That you want to be able to review it at a minimum every 5 years. But you wanna look at it annually to make sure you can set forth your work program, whether it's for the Plan Commission, whether it's for the City Council, and the things that you wanna accomplish in that coming year. We talk about the process that we went through to facilitate the plan. And then the last thing we end with is the plan structure. So telling everyone this is what what you're gonna find in each chapter. So this is a setup of what you would see in the chapter 1, planning foundation. As I said, we talk about the legal basis, the relationship to zoning, the relationship to the other plans, and how to amend and monitor the plan. And so you can see down in the corner where we have, over in that corner where we will have the tabs that allow people to tab back and forth between the different chapters and find what they're looking for. So the next chapter is the vision and values. So we summarize the community engagement process here. It contains the vision and value statements, and it discusses the major themes in the plan. So right now, as we've laid this out, we have a 2-page spread on community engagement. We talk about all the different elements that we have undertaken, the different meetings that we've had. And we show examples of those. But one of the things that I think we need to include in here in the next draft, after talking with the mayor, is really quantify how many meetings that were, how many people did we talk to, how many people were engaged through the website. Because it is a number of people. I mean, we had a lot of good engagement through this process. And so, I think that's one of the things that we need to look at in the next iteration of this draft. So then we have the vision and value statements. Obviously, those are gonna be in the dark gray, so it pulls your eye out. We just explain what a vision statement is and what a value statement is. The vision statement and value statements have not changed in probably 2 or 3 months, so they still should be consistent with what you saw last time. So we move on to chapter 3. And chapter 3 is the themes and the goals. So if you remember, we had several themes: housing, transportation, economic development, quality of place. And then we added another one of utilities. And so in this particular chapter, we have a 2-page spread on each of these themes that give you the highlights of what are the goals. You know, why is the theme important? Where the city is today? What needs to be done so those objectives that support those goals, how will it be done? Who's gonna be doing it, and measuring success. So this right here is, you know, what the page setup looks like. So, you know, we have the goal at the top of the page. We've highlighted, you know, 5 to 7 things of why this is important to the city. We've identified, you know, where we are in 2025, so a very tight snapshot of where we are in time, that, you know, especially when you start reading this plan 10 years from now, those conditions will have been changed. You know, what needs to be accomplished, so each of the objectives that relate to this goal, and then will be used to develop action steps that you'll see later in the plan. Then how will it be completed or done? Well, that is chapter 6, so it will hyperlink to chapter 6. Who will do it? That hyperlinks to chapter 7, where we have listed all the partners. And then we have some measuring success, some benchmarks there of how we're gonna measure that success. So I think it's fair to say that staff and ourselves are still tinkering around with those measuring of success benchmarks to make sure we're picking the right ones for the city. And Caleb, if you just want, yeah, you can flip through them. So we just put ones up here for each one of those, so you can see that each one has their own section with, and they're differently color coded.
Utilities isn't one that really comes up in the public engagement. Often people talk about transportation a lot, and it is one of the elements that we plan on talking about and are required to in a comprehensive plan. Anyway, it's generally in most communities not something that the public gets super excited about. So we don't talk about it in the development process much, but utilities is a required component of comprehensive plans. And so we do need to address it, and that's why it got added kind of on the back end. It's not sneaking something in or we forgot about it so much as just, it's not something that's on the forefront of most of the public's mind, but really does need to be addressed in the plan.
And we have the private utilities who are engaged through the focus groups. And so we've had their thoughts and their information.
Mike, you had a question?
I do, I was gonna wait till the end
It's okay.
until you specifically said utilities, and I always hate to be that guy, but this board knows that I'm that guy. So maybe it's because it's missing, so just tell me it's not complete, but this only contemplates water as of, I'm currently reading it. Is there a reason? Or maybe it's just not complete?
Later on in the utilities chapter, it undertakes water, stormwater, and wastewater.
But why only specifically water? If we're talking utilities for neighborhoods to grow, we're talking about gasification, electrification, is that just not something you typically would address in a document like this? For, we're gonna build these villages north of town, we're still gonna have to run electric utility, we're still gonna have to run gas utility, we're still gonna have to run broadband utility, which is
Okay, I
a
see what you're
huge
saying.
component. Now, water is very important, cause we're having a debate statewide right now.
Right.
But we're also having affordability issues statewide right now. I just got out of a meeting about that today.
Yes.
And so, I was just curious if there was a reason why only water was
Gas,
discussed.
electric, and broadband are generally not considered either drivers or limiters of development.
Sure.
Those utilities will extend where development chooses to go, and so often we don't cover them unless you own your own.
Sure.
Westfield doesn't have your own utilities, but if you would like us to make mention of who the provider is or the service areas or anything like that, we can add that to the plan, it's just that's a reason
No, if it's not
typically.
normal to do, it's more
Yeah.
education for me. I have another question, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
leave
this
it.
is, I mean, yes, if you
Yes.
have questions as we're going through,
Okay.
ask them.
Since you called it out specifically, that's why, can you, and the council president's gonna slap me here in a second, that's fine. Can you tell me what does it mean, the prioritization of green infrastructure related to utilities? Can you expound about what you mean there?
So we're talking about more so on the stormwater side.
Okay.
And looking at a couple of different things other than your traditional techniques to manage stormwater. So
Talking about wetlands and those types of treatments.
yes, or now I'm gonna blank.
Like bioswales.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
In urban,
Yes.
more urban areas, the difference
Rain gardens.
between rain gardens,
People
the
don't
difference
realize like the
between
Grand
surface
Grand
and
Junction
pipe.
Plaza has a huge, I mean, that water
Yes.
was not
Right.
even permitted for bodily contact
Right.
and frankly through engineering and wetlands. So like when anyone says you need to pull weeds, which I've had to
No,
deal with
those
this
weeds are
recently.
important.
I'm like, no, you can't touch that or literally it
Mhm.
falls apart, so so that those are things that we already have, most people don't even know that's what that is.
Right.
It's not my opinion.
So in some places, wetlands are appropriate technologies, in other places, pipes are more appropriate, and it's just making sure you're considering all of the potential
I mean, the
solutions.
city meets with energy providers pretty regularly for potential projections or economic development issues.
Mhm.
I mean, Kurt and I particularly can talk about water, cause I think we're the only two that were a pain in the ass, but we're gonna have a water pipeline running right through Westfield going straight to Lebanon, which since 2017's been out of water. And somehow convinced the state to buy a shit ton of land overpriced, but that's a little editorial. But but that's the piece that, I mean, we're seeing our water going from one watershed to another. And I mean, it was a done deal before they even announced it. So I'm like, they're dealing off yet, so maybe a little editorial, but that's the facts, so it is what it is.
Thank you for that, that helped clarify that for me, thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
I mean, I know we're on chapter 3, but I was making a lot, I don't know how you wanna do it, I got a lot of questions. So I don't know if you wanna do that in this format or not. I mean, how do you wanna, handle
Yeah,
that.
we can, I think we're moving pretty well and we have 2 hours
Okay.
allocated, so.
so if we can go back to economic development. So in
Chapter 3.
You have a page.
that 23, chapter, I don't know what chapter it is, but
Chapter 3.
Yeah, the chapter 3 on 22 and 23.
I'm just looking at economic development. So on measuring success, that's the primary the areas. So what's the, on item 1, what's the time frame? So like, you wanna increase, that's good. I don't know what the benchmarks are, but what's the time frame for that increase? Are we trying to do that year over year? I think that's probably not the case, but
No,
what's the total time frame? Is the
so it's over the next 20 years.
20 years?
Mhm.
Then I would say then those numbers, the goal numbers are probably low.
Okay,
I mean, if you're just looking at 6% and 5%, 11%, I think that's probably gonna be a little low. In 20 years, I mean, you're not gonna do that. I just think you're combined, I don't know how you measure. So, I mean, maybe it's 15, but I think that we have to up our tax base. And then I don't know how you calculate mixed use. Is that commercial and office? I don't believe mixed use is industrial,
no,
but is mixed use gonna be classified as residential, but we're being able to TIF it if it's 4 stories or higher. So to me, my language, I could throw that, a little asterisk. But
Yes.
I don't know in your world how that is.
so we usually
counted.
put it under commercial.
Okay. So like, I mean, we're gonna, our land prices, I think some of this is going to be very challenging based on land prices. It's $100,000 per acre of residential today. It's 700,000 bargain basement for commercial. And yeah, I don't think it's going down. So I mean, it may not
Agree.
skyrocket, but it's concerning. I like number 2. On number 5, it says increase the number of residents who work in Westfield. Can we put a number of how many it is today and what the goal is in I mean, if we're doing 20-year projections, what's the goal? Cause if we can't measure it, I mean, I think that's a good goal.
Yeah.
I mean, I want that on there. So, I mean, that's just a thought. The unemployment rate, just out of curiosity, I just asked current, don't even worry about that. And then housing piece, more than 60% of households in Westfield are housing cost burden. I'm assuming that's based on percentage of total income. Yeah,
It's people who are spending more than 30% of
35,
their,
yeah.
30% of their
30%.
income on housing costs. Housing plus transportation cost burden is 45% is the threshold.
And then on measuring success on the housing piece on item 2, I would just put, I mean, I agree with everything that's stated, just if we can associate some target numbers of what it is today, what we'd like it to be tomorrow, just so we have goals to measure against. The update the UDO, this is probably a little bit of a philosophical question, don't really just throw it out there. At $100,000 per acre, if somebody's acquiring land right now, we're gonna have totally different types of housing projects presented to us. And density is gonna be very interesting.
Yes, it is.
But there's some projects across the country that are called pocket neighborhoods. But our UDO probably wouldn't even permit that based on some of their square footage. And some of the counselors in here and planning commission would probably be violently opposed to this. But if we're gonna try to get teachers or retirees or public safety to live and breathe in our communities to try to address that with some utilization of maybe, I mean, there's some projects in front of us right now that have pieces of their overall project that a pocket neighborhood type concept could work. The challenge is they'll be located in or within walking distance of other things. So then the resale value of those things are gonna be obnoxious. So in some communities, they've actually looked at basically like a government program, which I hate to talk like that. It allows, if you're a member of our law enforcement, public safety, or teachers, or what have you, you could purchase these, but the resale is somewhat governed, and it's not an open market. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways, I'm not advocating for
Right.
either. There is a pocket neighborhood in Carmel that was built years ago, one in Zionsville too. Ross Chapin, I think, was the fancy architect, they're actually really well built. But that's some pieces that, I mean, you can't, conversations with national builders that do build in Westfield, they can't build a $350,000 house, they can hardly do it in Whitestown, we're
Right.
not gonna approve what Whitestown builds.
Yes.
I mean, I don't expect any of you to do
Right.
that. Well, I know, I just don't, we have no real history of that recently. And that's fair, but but different conversations about how that's addressed, because that, you're gonna have to look at the UDO differently, and I'm no planning department guru, I just sit there and ask questions usually of Kevin, and Kevin usually tells me, well, we could think about that, but whatever.
Well, when we get into place types,
Yeah, it is.
when we get into the place types, what you'll see is we started to ratchet down some of the actual lot sizes.
Yeah.
That corresponds to the place types in here, so we could start to address that, and then they line up into recommendations for the UDO.
Cause I think you've prepared this or were part of it on kind of the heat maps or
Mhm.
multidimensional AV.
Yes.
We first saw that, at least the council did in Carmel, where you saw Midtown Carmel just flying, but then
Right.
also you frankly saw Village West Clay.
Mm-hmm.
And in Westfield, you see frankly in the area I live, which is Harmony, spikes, because we have high value, if you will, but dense. The density
right.
is so significant. So you actually see some interesting spikes, and those are production homes. Obviously not custom, so those are pieces that, I mean, looking forward, I mean, just land costs are gonna be driving a lot of these decisions, so.
I got two things real
Yeah.
quick. One, we have a fourth council member, so now we have a quorum of the council, so I think we probably need to officially open a city council meeting. We'll say at 7:22. I'll take a quick roll call before we move forward any further. Mr. Tam.
Yeah, I'm here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah. Please write that down.
Mr. Woniger. Mr. Deppner. Present. Mr. Herron. Mr. Huff, Mr. Dart, not here. Okay, so also to follow up with a quick answer to the UDO question. We are anticipating updates to the UDO really beginning after the adoption of the comprehensive plan. We wanted to make sure we knew what
makes
we were
sense.
going to be
Yeah.
working towards from a regulatory perspective. So what I'm envisioning is we're gonna take the place types and kind of go through them and make sure that we have zoning support, you know, for each of the different place types. It may be an existing zoning district that we have that may or may not need modification, or we may be creating some new zoning districts to support what we're putting in this plan. So that'll be a next year project, and we may phase things in as we, I don't know that we'll do a complete repeal and replace at the end. I think we're moving too quickly for that. What I'm envisioning is we're gonna do pieces at a time, and as we get them done, we'll get them. We're not gonna do a complete redesign of our UDO. I don't think we need that, but I think we need to update to match the current, or what will be the current comp plan.
The other, sorry to keep on, but I
It's fine.
kinda have diarrhea of the mouth here, but the Westfield house spends no more than 30% and 45%. I agree, that's like good household policy. Do we need to, and this really goes with my next comment, we really need to have that in our comp plan, or is that something that we try to do, or?
It is a
Cross.
measuring stick, a benchmark that is
Affordability, obtainability
for
piece.
attainability that is used across the board, and so people are looking at it whether or not you wanna talk about it.
Okay, cause then at item 7, I mean, to me, if I'm a philosophical purist and average rent increases are limited to 5%. If you're a free market, somebody, that's price controls. So I personally kind of don't like having that, and I like the thought.
No, and I understand where you're coming
Yeah.
from. It's one of those things where we've seen over the past 5 years or so, rent has increased at an astronomical proportion compared to anything else. And wages don't keep track with that, and so that creates a lot of pressure on all parts of the housing market and all parts of families. Some communities are choosing to use that as a metric, some are choosing to put policies in place to kind of keep it toned down. Others are not, because they have that more free market mindset, and so that is certainly something for consideration as we go through finalizing the plan.
And then really on the next couple items, 8, 9, 10, and 11, I think they're all fantastic. my question on like number 8, which is the trail oriented development villages and downtowns have new construction brings gentle density. I just go back to what do we do with, what's a similar community with similar land costs? What do they look like? I don't know. I mean, I type that stuff in and try to look at it, but I don't do what you all do. I really like 9, 10, and 11. I would just try to increase them all, to be honest. To have them even have more green space, which the green space piece, I mean, the city to purchase green space is gonna be hard when we're trying to purchase land for other purposes. We need to, but we're gonna be relying on a lot of land donation or negotiations with developers to secure that green space, so those are the other piece there. The quality of place, which I think is critically important, just on the measuring success piece is just a bunch of benchmarks, like local history programming, what is it today, what can it be tomorrow? I mean, some of these are just deepening stuff, I know these are bullet points.
A lot of that's in the existing conditions and we may be able to
Okay.
cross-reference it.
Cross-reference
Yeah.
that, cause like the one item's environmental map,
Mhm.
it's in here somewhere,
Right.
maybe you cross-reference that in a final versus the, and then 6, I would just go back to that developer comment. The other piece on what needs to be done, I think some of this though, like the 4th one down, which quality tree standards and natural. We do have a tree bank piece that we did, I don't think that totally addresses all of this, there's a lot going on in that item. But I don't know if there's some ways where you start referencing some things that have recently occurred and because they need to be deepened or strengthened or even taken to some future steps as well. And the transportation piece, which some people in the room know, I like public transportation quite a bit, but we have passed, the township passed the red line tax a number of years ago, maybe even a decade now, I've slept since then. But then Brainerd, well, is this being recorded? So then Clay Township did not pass it the next day when they were going to pass it.
Tyler first time.
we'll have to clear that out.
So, but that's fair, that's fair. I asked a question for a reason. But how do we fund that and what's the goal? I mean, cause if it just stops within Washington Township, I mean, we need connectivity to other counties
The
and
way
other regions.
the enabling legislation for that particularly was written is Clay Township is a whammy for you. And you know, when I was at the MPO, I had conversations with the staff about this and we had this conversation. It was like, yeah, until Clay Township moves, you can't in the current legal structure.
So there's, just to
So,
get
other
a little,
options.
there's a serious issue with the ability, we have tremendous disposable income rooftops. Fishers is ahead of us on this issue, but then they have the ability to get some people with reliable transportation from Muncie and Anderson. And so our ability for employment base, for whether it's service or attractions or entertainment or retail, is going to be completely compromised with each passing year of costs, particularly when there's some parcels or some developments that are looking to sell that may provide today lower cost of living. And those folks are gonna move on. So there's gonna be significant challenges, and there already are, but it will be even more, and it will compromise the ability for services and amenities and quality of place activities that people like in the community, because this isn't a immediate issue, maybe, but on more of a horizon issue, so that's the piece that I'm just thinking a little bit differently. I know you guys look at it that way and probably can spin circles around me on this, but to me, it's a pretty serious, I don't know how you're gonna staff certain establishments, but those establishments or businesses are going to want to continue to grow or build here because we have the incomes and the spend, we track the visitors, particularly with Grand Park, 6 million and counting, so how do you staff those when you can't get people to and from? It's gonna become an issue. You have a hospital that's going up. That's some other things may happen to the north, and then how does that also compromise some things as well? So, not something to be worried about probably in the next 4 or 5 years, but it's a 20-year document, we probably should be.
I have a comment on transportation too. You mentioned bicycles, you mentioned golf carts. On this side, but there's not really a plan for bicycles and carts and what that looks like in 20 years. I mean, I think bicycle friendly cities are becoming very, very popular. So I think maybe that needs to be addressed more in detail, where the bike's gonna be, where we're gonna park. Can I ride from my house, you know, from 159th over to downtown Westfield comfortably? I can't right now, but maybe as all these new developments go up, there's a bike trail that will assist in the connectivity. So all those two modes of transportation, also really traffic, air pollution, there's a lot of positives if we get more people riding bikes and driving golf carts. So anyway, that's not really addressed, I don't think here, although it's mentioned in 2 places here.
Yeah, for the measures of success and key performance, you only got 3 things for transportation.
Yeah,
That's woefully
I think you definitely need to include
developed.
bikes.
Same with utilities, you only have 3 bullet points for measures of success.
And maybe, you know, we encourage kids to ride their bikes as opposed to school buses in these nice seasons. Look at these 2 elementary schools going up and all these houses right across the street. Not only is that positive for the kids' health, it's positive, a lot of positive, especially now that busing is getting so expensive.
Right, and your superintendent is supportive of kids arriving at school, walking and biking, which is in other communities that has become a challenge, is that the administration is not supportive, so you do have that support.
No, that's great, but I think in here it needs to be established that we are putting in more ways for children to get from point A to point B, not only adults.
Yep.
Okay.
Dr. Keen,
Thank you.
you have been so patient, sir. I'm so sorry.
I wanna go back kind of to the start of this, with some thoughts, since I've done strategic plans. This is a 20-year plan. Can it not be framed, cause I worry about things like sense of urgency and feedback loops and intermittent adjustments to the plan. Can it be framed in, this is the first 5-year plan of a 20-year plan, so that there's some sense that this is going to be reviewed and maybe updated rather than waiting. 2007, is that the last comp plan that we really had? So you're talking
way-
18 years. So here's the 5, this is what we wanna do in 5 years. There's 2 legislative sessions gonna occur during a 5-year period of time. Council's gonna have elections, mayor election, all these things are going to occur. There should be some way to force looking at this more frequently than saying, we got 20 years before we have to worry about this.
Completely understand and wanna point out a few things for you to look at in detail, and then we can continue the conversation. In chapter 1, we do talk about updates and annual reviews and 5-year reviews and updates as necessary, cause we certainly don't want it to be wait 20 years and then have to do a big thing. The other part is the implementation chapter, breaks things down into shorter time periods for the specific actions. And that will help prioritize which things are kind of in that first 5 years, which are slightly longer term, and longer term than that. But many of these issues are so universal that it would be hard to say, like, do these things in the first 5 years. This is the first 5-year plan of a 20-year plan.
But if we're going to grow something, I didn't look at all the bullet points, if we're going to grow something by 25% over the next 20 years, how much of that 25% are we planning on growing in the first 5 years? And it's probably not 1/4 of it, because usually when you're starting out, it's a slow start, you're crawling before you're walking and running. So there's some expectation of the community that you're saying, we're monitoring this. It may look like we're not accomplishing things, but in the first 5 years, we're really ahead of what we thought we would be as we try to get to that 20-year goal. So there's little pieces, but to me, it's all a mental set, expectation from the community and the workforce.
So in these maybe to put it another way, in these measuring success sections, are you looking for maybe 5-year benchmarks or
Yeah,
annual like, is that what you're trying
okay,
to?
I'll give you the educational example. We wanted to raise the number of kids meeting or achieving their NWA objectives up to a certain point. But we knew we couldn't get there in 2 years or 3 years. We knew it'd take longer, but this is what we wanna do the first 5 years. This is what we wanna do the next 5 years. So that everybody was aware of it, everybody was pulling together, focused on where we wanted to get to ultimately. You know, Patrick pointed out some different things in there. I worry a little bit about how many of these points we're going to be measuring and get feedback on, who's tracking them, who's looking at, I mean, there's a lot of good data, but what are we gonna do with the data if we don't have ways to implement it and going forward too? So to me, there's some things operationally that I'm concerned about out of a plan like this.
Caleb's section tracks those things and reports against many of those benchmarks and can evolve to do that. He did a benchmark report on what had been done in the past plan at the beginning of this plan, and that's a lot of the work that the long range staff does.
Yeah, I think
Caleb, I mean, if you wanna hop in
Yeah,
further on that or.
I think it is a prudent point mentioning that in years past, the previous comp plan, there have been planning staff, but the hierarchy of the department, the orientation of it was arranged differently. So there weren't planners necessarily day after day looking at the comp plan and tracking it. We have a division specifically for that. So there are 3 staff, we're all here, myself, Shelby and Clarissa, we're all here in this room right now. We're gonna be the ones day after day, this is our day after day job. It's gonna be monitoring all of these things that you're seeing.
And feeding back information to the appropriate departments on, here's where you're at, this is where we said we're going to be. Might be thinking about adjustments you need to make in operations or whatever.
Yeah, per the guidance of the comp plan, that gives us hitting the ground running mentality, and the implementation plan, as I said in here, that's gonna be the framework for how we operate. So all that's gonna be the guidance for us.
You know, but it doesn't, you know, we can look at putting a few sentences in there at the beginning to help frame that. You know, while this is a 20-year plan, you shouldn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
So we can certainly reframe that at the beginning.
It needs to be looked into what Dr. Keene's saying, I mean, that's, all of a sudden you look up in year 18,
Mhm.
which, I mean, truth be told, this is gonna be, not better be redone, but, it needs to have near and long term.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, that's built in, that is a shortfall of the current comp plan that we're living under. It didn't really do a very good job of outlining that expectation, and to Caleb's point, nor were we really staffed in a way to make sure that we were keeping up with that. I mean, it was enough to keep up with the day-to-day, development pressure and reviews with the staff that we had, but we have since restructured and we have dedicated folks now. And hopefully we can continue that structure moving forward, to keep that priority in check.
So would you say that like how the first comprehensive plan was done, that's why we're staring at some of the addendums that we have to stare at now? Like, is there any way to mitigate the amount of amendments that happen to the comprehensive plan, or is that kind of just a product of a more long-term outlook, and the amendments are how you, I guess, take into consideration the unknowns that happen within that 20-year plan? Like, what does that look like? Cause I find myself cross-referencing a lot of these things as we're looking at different developments, trying to understand intent versus where we are versus where we actually should be.
Some of those, such as like downtown, will be resolved in the downtown master plan. That's why that's correlating at the same time as this. So we have these master plans that all correspond to each other. So a lot of the addendums address downtown, so
Right.
probably three of them, right? Two of the addendums address the big elephant in the room, Grand Park, right? No one in 2007 anticipated Grand Park. It's kind of like the Leak District out west. No one anticipated that when master plan. So those things of scale may warrant some sort of addendums in the future, but when we talk about smaller scale amendments, our vision is to treat it more of like how we update the UDO. We make more of those patches as it goes along instead of kind of wholesale amendments.
And that's why, I mean, that's why we've worked so closely with staff in developing this, so that way they understand the structure, the framework, the thought that went into this, so they could easily update it. You know, if it needs to be every couple of years, or, you know, they see a patch or a condition or trend has changed that they need to address.
I think that's the biggest thing for me, when I keep talking about, it, like on the frontiers of, or the outer edges, the fringes of the existing comprehensive plan, is like, we have some amendments, we said we've been good about trying to patch or update somewhat as we go, but here we are 18 years later, still talking with each other about, well, how should we really be treating the southwest fringe, or how should we be treating the project that just came near 146, and so it's, how do we, those are the smaller pieces, those are smaller patches, but instead of us patching that, we've just more or less unilaterally changed the comprehensive plan via vote based off of what we felt was the correct condition at that time.
And that's a really good point. I think another key difference of the current comprehensive plan and this one is what we were about ready to get into is the place types. The place types are a much more drilled down, detailed future land use for every acre of land to counteract that exact reason. The current comprehensive plan has very broad brushstrokes, which makes it really challenging for the situations you just mentioned. So I think that's a key.
And is there an anticipation that intentional place making can help limit the amount of PUDs we see that amend this as well? Like, is it the long-term overarching goal?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
so. It goes back to the UDO update,
Right.
right? I mean, like I said, we'll go through and identify the different place types and how they correlate to zoning, and make sure that we have zoning districts that are in place to build out these place types. And yeah, I'm not gonna ever sit here and say we're gonna eliminate PUDs.
Right.
But
the goal
we
of the
can
place typing
dramatically, I
is
think,
it's essentially a simple classification of that place type in terms of.
yeah, that's right. We can reduce that and use the zoning that will correlate to place types when we have it in the
Yeah,
future.
it's like saying it's SF1, but really it's, you know, mixed use one or whatever, right? That makes sense.
Okay, should we go on to the place types?
What a great segue.
That's right.
Tee that up really
Yeah,
well.
exactly. You're welcome, everybody.
Okay, as I indicated before, the place types are really one of the core elements of the plan. So we start off this chapter talking about what is a place type. These, how it differs from managing the land use. And we talked about all that introductory section you've all seen before. That has not changed from the standards that we've had probably for the last 9 months. Then we get into a several page spread for each place type, where we give the place type definitions. We show the place type map. We get into general place type recommendations. So these are principles that cut across any type of place type and should be kept in mind as you're evaluating any type of development. And then we get into the details of the place type. So if you wanna click, so this is the introduction of the actual place types. And so you see here, we kind of define what that is, the relationships with the identity of the community. We talk about the development intensity, sustainable finances, and the shape and impact of density. And then here is the place types map. So a lot more detailed and defined than what you all have seen in the past. So, we're able to calculate, acreages and numbers and things that staff will be able to monitor over a period of time. So then what we've done is we've put together, this is some of the general place type information. So we address connectivity and walkability, parking facilities, building and site design, open space is another one that we address, again, just generally, that cuts across over all of the place types. Then we have in here, what you see is what you would see in your UDO, a land use matrix. But it's very, very generalized. And so this is where we put all the place types down the left-hand side. And then we put major categories of land use, so agriculture, public open space, private open spaces, single-family detached, single-family attached. And then we give examples of types of land uses under each of those. And then we generally say whether there are primary land use in that place type or secondary land use. So you can get an idea very quickly about the land use and the character that we want to see in each of those place types. So then we've just pulled out a few pages here. This is an example of the suburban village neighborhood where we start off with an image and a description of what the suburban village neighborhood is. What are some of the key characteristics that we want to see in that neighborhood? Of course, we've carried over the recommended land uses. We talk about the street type patterns that we want to see in that neighborhood. Whether it's cul-de-sac, whether it's a traditional grid or a curvilinear grid. So we put in there what we prefer, what we not prefer, and what could be okay. And then we have precedent images that represent different characters or different styles that you may see in this case, the suburban village neighborhood. This will be one of those things that, when we get to the end and talk about the review, look at these images and make sure they're consistent with what you want to see for the future of Westfield. And then the next 2-page spread, you will see all of the detailed characteristics that we go through for each place type. So we go through mobility of street networks, commercial vehicles, bike and pedestrians, golf carts, on-street parking, speed and capacity. Under site design, we talk about block and lot patterns, access points, building placement, setbacks and build-to lines, off-street parking access, amenities and open space, landscaping and stormwater management. And then in some cases, there are some special considerations for particular areas within the community that we make a note about there at the end. And I think as things continue to change in the city, I could see where this might be one of the places where the staff might make adjustments or amendments over time. So the next one is just the suburban commercial. Again, exact same setup. Oh, if you just wanna flip through those. Again, same thing with the different precedent imagery. And again, the same setup you have with looking at mobility. This time we did put in there streetscape, site design, and then special considerations. So as Caleb or Kevin said, we're really trying to hone in into detail more on the character of the type of place we're trying to create in each of these place types. Any thoughts or questions before I go on to the next section?
Just kind of briefly, all encompassing when it comes to the place type map. Of course, I'll be digesting this through study and then of course meeting on Friday and more and more as we dive into this, but just off the bat, looking at the place types map, the last I knew, and of course I'm wrapped up in the northwest area, but with the northwest and I guess also in the southwest, a large sum of it was rural residential. And so just kind of, since we have everyone together, what happened between then, just a couple months ago and now, for it now to be master plan neighborhoods and talking about more density and all this stuff as opposed to what the path we were on before being rural residential?
Well, I think when we came back and looked at it, and I think we wanted to be realistic and know that and illustrate to the public that the whole township is going to build out. And the question is, how do we wanna manage that build out? And then what place types should we put there? Instead of having the staff come back and have you all kind of debate that again, let's figure that out now and have that conversation within the public and have that represented in the map. We then took the areas that were rural residential and moved them into the parks, open space conservation area, which you see as the dark green on here, which then we're not anticipating any development in there. So we're not anticipating further residential subdivision splits or anything like that. So that's kind of the tact we chose to take in the change that we made between the last round of edits that you saw and this round of edits.
Is it too
Go ahead.
is it too pigeonholy to, or is it even possible to understand out of the land uses that are in our purview, what percentage of land use you have prescribed to each of these kind of use matrices?
Yes,
Right, I'm just genuinely curious, right, cause to your point, if we're now lump summing what is the rural residential, like we've talked about, and we're putting them into this open space that a lot of people have planned for, that livelihood based off of
Yeah.
the previous comprehensive plan, so I'm intrigued to understand how that has changed and what is still reserved for that style of approach.
And going from seeing really majority green in the northwest and southwest, that's just what the color was previously, to now the yellow and dark orange. I mean, it scares me to be quite honest, because then just using my experience being on planning commission, I know that once we approve this essentially becomes a playbook for developers and they start looking at, oh, well, where do we need to start gobbling up land and then presenting their proposals to city council, planning commission. I mean, that's what's happened over the last 10-15 years and that's how we've grown so quickly. Whereas, and I've shared this in previous meetings, but I would say my approach then would be in going back to evaluating every 5 years, 10 years, et cetera, and again, this is a 20-year plan, but that benchmark then is every 5 years, 10 years, whatever, of, oh, do we need to reevaluate where we made a certain place type and do that update and so forth. I mean, that's kind of a trigger point in a good way. I mean, for me, of, oh, we need to take care of this now, we're reaching this point or whatever. It's that tipping point of, oh, do we need to reevaluate what's going on, as opposed to doing it all at once. Again, it's a little frightening, because then it's, oh, this is just what's happening.
And
well,
then,
I think, oh, I'm sorry.
well, I was gonna kind of piggyback on that too, because then I'm also curious on the, how much of this is shown, especially in that northwest corridor, is, you know, extraterritorial to Westfield currently that would still need to be annexed in, and then how does that annexation account for this comprehensive plan? Because if those annexations are done by a case-on-case basis, is the developer or the party requesting that voluntary going to be subjected to the updated comprehensive plan as the baseline?
So regardless of annexation or not, they would be subject to, cause we have planning and zoning jurisdiction over the entire township.
Right.
So even if they're annexed or not, we're still gonna be making sure that developments are consistent with the plan. I think it just contiguous growth is, I don't know if it's specifically mentioned in here or not. I know it's a principle that we have really stayed true to in my time here. Like, we're not leapfrog developing, right? We're making sure the next development is contiguous to existing development. So that's a that's a smarter way of growing and developing, and I think
That
we will
193rd
continue that
and
pattern.
Enfield is a prime example.
Right, I
of
mean,
that,
you
right?
do end up with pockets, right, of, you know, holdouts or whatever that don't wanna participate at the time, but then come back later and wanna sell and, yeah, we have these infill projects. So I don't know if that answers all your question, but,
I mean, it does.
so I don't know that we will, well, I mean, I guess it's ultimately up to the council right at the time, but I would discourage leapfrog, you know, zoning projects for development that are not contiguous to existing, you know, developed areas.
And that's a policy, I don't think that,
Right, utilities is gonna be a big driver for that,
Well, that's
right?
kind of my overall point though, is that given where our current boundaries are today, where we have utility constraints, restrictions, so forth, it just, it's hard for me to think that, oh, more master plan, I know it's 20 years, but more master plan developments, more suburban village neighborhoods as opposed to the rural residential, when there's gonna be so many constraints in certain pockets anyway, if that kind of makes sense.
Water and wastewater utilities is not a constraint. They'll extend them, put them wherever you want. They'll put lift stations wherever you want, they'll build it.
Well, to your
And
point,
that is not a constraint.
to your point though, that you've mentioned in a previous meeting,
Look at
that,
Baker's Corner and what they just did all the way to 31 corridor in Hamilton County. They built all that, betting on everybody coming there, so.
well, and to one of, again, your points in the prior meeting though, is that, again, looking at the prior comp plan, I believe you had mentioned that it gave kind of the green light for citizens
Yeah,
whomever.
when Westfield had utilities, we controlled the growth because we wouldn't extend the water and sewers further than our jurisdictional boundaries or if they annexed.
right,
Soon as citizens bought it, Hortonville they go,
yeah.
Chatham Hills.
Mhm.
So you can't use utilities and say that's a restraint,
Right.
that is not a restraint. They're running a line all the way over to Lebanon, so they'll be able to serve this whole area, so don't use that as an excuse.
Well, and that's not the way I intended
Yeah.
it, just meaning that, again, it's rural residential, and really I was thinking of going back to your prior point, that giving that green light, then that promotes that growth.
One of the things that happens though, when you leave things in rural residential and have people actually develop as rural residential, that constrains the land available and sometimes pushes larger scale development further out because they can't do the land assembly, they can't get the willing sellers. And so that's how you end up leapfrogging some and ending up with development patterns that are disjointed and harder to serve, is because you didn't acknowledge from the beginning, hey, this should be developed, when it develops at a higher intensity.
And I think one of the other things, I mean, that we can strengthen in here is, you know, making sure we're promoting contiguous growth. Because I don't know that we have that principle spelled out right, so something that we could go back in and include.
I got a question for you. So looking at this map as much as I can, there's been conversations or ramblings about most of this, so I understand whether I agree or disagree is a different story, but the one that kind of shocking that stood out was the 216th corridor at the top, all this mixed use. I have yet to hear anyone ever mention anything like that for 216th. Where did this information or idea come about?
It was a conversation with economic development about trying to make sure that as development happens there, that it doesn't all happen on the Adams Township side, and kind of controlling that destination more, if I
And then, you know, upgrading 216 to be another one of those primary corridors, but again, making sure that it doesn't turn into State Road 32. So this would also house employment uses within that corridor.
So the idea is
It
more of a
dead ends at 31, and it just, that makes no sense to me.
There-
He
there-
circled, I had question marks all over it too. that does not.
I mean, like
make
a
sense.
hundred, more like 146th Street type of idea, is that more than a 32, is that what we're thinking there?
I would probably think so.
Yeah, basically Carmel's pretty well out west, they put residential all the way, and now all we're doing is we're putting commercial on the north side of 146th Street.
Yes.
So we're just pushing all of our commercial to our perimeter because we don't want it on the inside. And that, it goes against one of the things you guys have in here is it's walkable, and
Right.
easy to get to. You put it on the perimeter, it's not walkable and easy to get to.
Well, and I think we can't say, I think it's unrealistic to say that the entire city is gonna be walkable. I think what we're trying to look at is creating nodes and areas within, pockets within the community that will be walkable. You know, certainly as we see new subdivisions and new village nodes come in, we wanna make sure those are walkable. And the neighborhoods that develop around them. But yes, like you said, the 216th Street corridor, having that be walkable would likely be unrealistic.
I just would assume, I would see more of that orange probably around those pink areas or incorporated within some of those pink areas. Or it's just a kind of weaving of the two. But it's just my thought.
So the pink areas are the village centers, which would have the commercial, the office, and the residential. They'd be the more dense and be walkable.
I have a question about the golf course. Do you anticipate that it's not gonna be there in 20 years? Is that something that needs to be preserved, cause it's all identified as master plan suburban residential? And I would think that would be designated as green space.
Golf courses are a use within the residential place types. And that's the difference between a place type, which describes a type of place, and a specific land use. So the golf course could very much be in there, more than being, often they're not designated as
Parks
open
or-
space or parks as much as amenities in there. Because it is now a public golf course, there's an argument that could be made either way if you have a preference.
And so in the master plan place type, that type of place type would have more amenities to it than what you see in the suburban mixed use place type or the suburban village neighborhood place type. So it could be, you know, someone coming in and building or tying into that golf course and using it as an asset for their master plan.
Which is what they've done.
Right.
So, okay, I just wanna make sure that golf course preserved in 20 years.
Right.
And then we handle that in the place having by make like those are both permitted primary uses, and so technically you could do cart or horse on however you approach it. That makes sense.
Exactly.
So many questions.
This is so many things.
Well, it's a lot to digest.
Right, and chapter 4, as we mentioned, is the bulk of the plan. It's got a lot in there. It's gonna take you a while to read through it and review it. And at the end of today, Cynthia will lay out a process for you to get comments back to us. It's not just in this meeting right now.
Yes, we're writing down your comments, but these, you know, we don't expect you to give them all to us tonight. You're just seeing a lot of this for the first time.
I will admit, it's a little overwhelming.
That's some good reading to do, just like,
Just carve off a section each night. No, I'm just kidding. Alright, so the next chapter is chapter 5, the transportation section. It goes hand in hand with the place types. So we start off talking about the policy and recommendations for the transportation system. We then move into the street types and how the street types interplay with the place types. The relationship between the street types and the city identity. The limitation of street types, and then the street types and improvements map. So, Helen, if you wanna. So we start off with the policy and recommendations up front.
Page
Um,
138 for those trying to find it.
Chapter tab 1.
Huh?
Chapter tab 1.
Yeah.
and so,
Just a real quick question, at the bottom down by the page number, it says 139, or page 139, chapter tabs. They all say 111111.
Well, you missed that part of it.
Yes,
We're
you
gonna
came in late.
update and correct those, and then those will be hyperlinked in the digital versions of it, so you just click
I
on
was,
it.
when I was looking through, I was like, why is it?
Yeah, no, this is an 80% draft, and so some of those refinements aren't quite there yet.
correct. So, we start off talking about the transportation and policy recommendations. And then Kelly, we wanna go to the next one. So then this is where we talk about the differences between the street types and the place types. You know, how you should think about them, the limitations of the street types, you know, trying not to oversimplify. Make sure that we're not creating equity gaps, that we're making sure we're taking into account changing conditions and making sure that as we're interpreting it, we're not misaligning the overall place type because of the streets. Wanna go to the next one. So then we have, just like the place types, we have an overall transportation map that shows what the different roadway classifications or street types should be, as well as the improvements that need to occur at the various intersections.
Street types don't replace functional classification. They help guide the type of street that goes along with the land uses and character of a place. And they work alongside functional classification, which is used for your engineering requirements and for your federal funding applications.
I'm sorry, is this what you're forecasting as future use or existing use?
For future.
Well, the kind of
Street types.
piggybacking off of that on this map on page 143, does it behoove us to mark with these pink asterisks where improvements are already planned for the next 2 years? For instance, 186 in Casey, 193rd in Casey, the roundabout ordeal with 191st and Horton Road. Just some of these areas that we're already allocating funds for to complete within the next couple of years.
This map doesn't even show our proposed trail system, the Eagle Creek Trail, the Grassy Branch Trail, all the other trails that are proposed. We've had proposed for the last 12, 15 years.
Also the new redirection of Town Road.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I wanna understand too,
Okay.
you made a classification by the time like road type and street type or whatever you just mentioned. But we're showing the entire northwest corridor as agricultural, industrial, but then just reclassified that into a significant amount of mixed use and suburban residential and everything else we just talked about. So can you describe again, I guess, how that works, like trying not to mix the two, but I feel like if we're looking at the use matrix and the map of that use matrix, and we're seeing northwest corner as a hotbed of residential, but then we're labeling it as agricultural industrial, what's that? How does that jive, I guess?
So
I'm not sure I understand that.
it's not really agricultural industrial, it should just be industrial. On a certain part of the roadway, that was one of the
There we go.
connection, or one of the updates that did not get dropped off the legend in the, when we were updating it, between, cross-reference between us and Lockmuir.
Because again, so how, that makes sense kind of, and so would we not anticipate that there'd be more mixed use, low density commercial connectors in that northwest corridor? Again, embracing that updated matrix we just saw? Okay.
Okay, any other questions on the map for now?
I would just say for the transportation section, I assume Jonathan L. and his department's looking at
Yes,
this,
he is looking
He's
at that.
reviewing it.
he and I have had multiple conversations, he and I are in agreement, we don't really need 4-lane boulevard roads and those shown on page 146.
And
Yes.
It's actually the same drawing. I guess they're a little different. One's 3.
So yeah, so then we have the next 2 pages that talk about, that give the matrices that line up the actual functional class with the street types. Then we talk about the street type characteristics in terms of ADTs, speed limits, road widths, and level of service, typical ranges. And then on the facing page, we talk about the characteristics in terms of how many travel lanes, what those widths would be, medians, parking, bike and ped facilities, intersection controls, lighting, transit, and then golf cart access to it. And then the last remaining pages just get into the description, detailed description of each of the street types and talk about what the characteristics are and then other considerations that need to be taken into account. And I think probably one thing that we probably need to talk with Lockmuir about is creating a separate trails map so it doesn't get lost on the transportation map.
Particularly when you're encouraging, I mean, it's kind of, you said bicycle usage. You're also your perimeter trails around neighborhoods, those allow golf carts. So that's gonna be even more important. So like, you have some street type descriptions, and I usually defer to Kurt in a lot of these areas in transportation related. But the having those perimeter trails, I mean, that's a mandate for any new, I mean, that's just like, you know, they have to put that on. Or they beat them up and then, you know. So on some of this, it is, but then on some of the, I'll just for sake of conversation, say the north-south main arterial roads like Town Ditch and others, you can almost get connected. And just talking north-south here, obviously east-west is another conversation. But including those, because people may wanna take their golf carts on there and then finding ways. Mayor's not interested in eminent domain for that type of purpose for those multi-use paths, but getting those plugged in is gonna be pretty important. So I don't know if that's reflected on these, I mean, it is on several. Obviously, I understand if you're in like mixed use kind of urban area, that it's gonna be a nice sidewalk with all sorts of different features. And then bikes will be on the main road, if you will, maybe in a lane, but yeah.
Okay. Any other comments for right now or overarching thoughts?
So I'm sorry, will the updated roadway map be provided soon? You said that just didn't make the cut, was that what you said, I'm sorry? With the updated road types?
Well, it won't be provided soon because we're still waiting on engineering's comments.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
So as
Sorry.
soon as we get their comments.
Thank you.
And, you know, if you all have other comments, then we'll incorporate it and then that will provide to you
Perfect, I'm just
that next
intrigued, I mean,
update.
like we always look at the traffic body, but there's gonna be a lot more yellow and orange out there than currently shown, right? So just intrigued by that.
And then we'll separate out the trail map as well.
How's the best way to get comments back to you, instead of just marking up 20 books and giving you 20 books that are all marked up?
Give them through Caleb. Is
Do like a contact us form online that we can submit to? Okay, what is the best way for you, like, you want us to scribble in the books, would you prefer like written memos with page numbers and references, like
I mean,
what's?
the other thing that we could do is because it's an Adobe PDF document, we could put it on the system and then email it to everyone that way so they can go in and tag sections in the PDF. Yeah, PDF
Yeah.
markup,
All these documents
if
into
that's
one.
easier.
It's gonna be a mess.
Probably.
We didn't really talk about this part.
Right, it'll probably cut out a step versus going through and synthesizing runs, because then you're gonna have contrasting
You're talking about having
comments,
one
so.
single document that everybody comments on.
Or if you
Yeah.
did an Excel spreadsheet with
You may
page
want-
numbers on it, and you've
you
got
may-
everybody put them all.
Can we
in
just
one
drag
page.
30 into AI
Share
to
file.
synthesize this
Share
for
file.
somebody?
Excel spreadsheet with
Before we make that decision, Kevin will get clarification from city legal, that could be considered a serial meeting
Okay,
on a shared document. So that's the only, you,
I'd not thought
I
about
would,
that.
I would defer to
I'm
have
guessing
Kevin
the
talk.
answer's probably
with
gonna be
city
yes
legal.
on that, but we'll.
We as a council cannot do a shared document
Shared doc.
and make constant comments, at least not shared with everybody. Joe and I can send something to each other,
Mhm.
but not others.
But one of us can step out of that if it needs to be too.
Yeah, no, that's actually,
Are you
volunteering?
Volunteers.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, we'll
Should
work
there be
with
a, like-
Caleb and Kevin to figure out what's the best
That
way.
to all of you by
With deadline, and then I also wonder, I mean, we serve at the pleasure of you and the administration, right? Like, should you guys have first pass before planning commission does this just for efficiency's sake? So we're not, hey, we love this, and you come in and go, I hate everything about this, and then it's, you're just gonna override it
Kurt's
anyway.
gonna do that anyways.
Right, that's my point, so, maybe, but if you say no, it is what it is, but just trying to be more concise for staff respect, right, of like, limiting the parameter of what you want us
I
commenting on.
think all of you spend a lot of time doing this, I don't think we should have you guys take a crack at it at the same time.
Okay.
I think that'd be ill advised. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Billy, I appreciate it, but I think you guys should take a full crack at it.
I think in the interim, before we give final direction, if at least, if you're gonna, in between that time, make notes or something, I would just encourage to do it digitally. Because one, it'll help us be able to legibly read people's comments rather than trying to interpret.
Well, I asked Victor, do I get to send an expense report to the city for all the like Post-it tabs I was gonna have? So that makes sense.
Yeah, even if it's like a Word document with page number references or something, I mean, that stuff is just easy copy and paste and they consolidate document if we go that way, so. If you make any comments from now until when we give final direction, please do it digitally
Mhm.
on your own devices.
Yeah, in the PDF, that
That's
would be the best, cause then we
Yeah.
could, even if we
Or
got
or if you're
individual
not
PDFs.
comfortable with PDF markup,
No,
because then do a Word document with page numbers.
Yeah. And everyone should have received.
A digital copy.
So the one today at 3:58, this is the one.
Yeah.
This is the one you have in front of you.
The only other question, when, what's the deadline? You need to talk about that?
I think we're gonna talk about it at the end of this.
November 14th,
November
November
14th.
that's on the last slide. Does everybody want me to jump to the last slide?
It's like I'm writing a thesis.
Okay, let me flip through, let's go through quickly the last two chapters here. So the connecting it all together, we summarize, so this is how we connect the place types with the policy side of other things that you need to be doing. So we also give an overview of past planning efforts, a discussion on the city forum, an overview of your annexation history, and then we do a deeper dive highlighting existing conditions, plan and future development, and then policy recommendations that supplement the place types. And then we've added a couple sections here for stormwater, innovative and emerging trends and technologies, and then sustainability. So again, we'll just go ahead and kind of flip through this. And you can see what the pages look like. So here, I think the section that we put in the PowerPoint is the economic development section. So we talk about the key market factors, development opportunities, where the gaps and challenges are. Flip. We talk about strategic areas to be developed. within the city, and then we have a write-up of each of those different areas and, you know, what's important about them and why they're strategic. And then we talk about the types of jobs and employment that should be in those areas. And then we go into more detail on some of the place types, like the flex industrial place type and what type of industries we wanna see in that.
Same with
Same,
destination
yeah, same with
development.
destination, I'm sitting in a,
An awkward angle.
and then we talk about some best practices in destination development. Key elements of the destination development. And then we get to the action steps of different things that you need to do over the next 20 years. And all these action steps are then pulled into the implementation section. So each section, you know, economic development, housing, transportation, quality of place, they're all set up a little bit different because of the characteristics that drive that particular section. But they all end with very specific action steps tied into the goals and the objectives. And then these are the action steps that would support them. And then the last chapter is implementation. So again, we consider this to be one of the most important chapters in the plan because it tells the planning staff how to implement the plan. So we go over the principles of implementation, looking at a flexible approach, making sure we're fiscally responsible. Also a statement in there about pursuing other grants, which are critical because most grant agencies will ask you if you have a statement in your comprehensive plan, so we have that. Collaboration and partnerships to implement this. This is not all on the city to implement this plan. You know, you have other organizations like the Chamber of Commerce and other groups that will be engaged to help implement sections of this plan. And so we've incorporated that into the implementation matrix. We need to be open and nimble to opportunities. You know, again, this is not a plan that should just be sit on the shelf and changed periodically. We want it to be fluid, to be responsive to the changes that are occurring. And we wanna make sure there's also some accountability in the implementation of it. Again, we go into much more detail on the plan review and update and the interpretation of the plan. Then we have the implementation matrix. Talk about primary initiatives, and then the implementation matrix itself, talking about each goal, objective, the action steps, key partners, the priority, the level of difficulty, and the timing of that. And so then I just this is a couple of the different sections that I just talked about. If you wanna keep flipping. And then this is what one section of the implementation matrix looks like. So we've numbered each of the objectives and numbered each of the action steps. You will see the priority in the center, the level of difficulty on a scale of 1 to 4, with 1 being the easiest and 4 being the most difficult to enact. You have the lead agency.
We did this at our last comprehensive.
Yes, you did.
And so was this a direct synthesis of that, or did you guys kind of put your own adaptation onto
So
this?
different groups had different perspectives, so we had to synthesize some of
It's kind of like
that
the average
and kind of
received.
And put our own, and then,
put some professional
Yes.
experience and
Yeah,
understanding behind some of it. Some of it, there wasn't a lot of input from some of the groups, and so we used our best professional judgment and experience to fill in the blanks, if you will.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yes, this builds on that exercise that you did.
And in
And then-
this, I'm sorry, and in this, will you, because this is implementation, will you provide essentially kind of this filled out as a recommendation of how it should be implemented? Or is this something that based on the information you give city, they could shift and change that based on priorities?
They can still shift and change that based on priorities, because again, what we've tried to take into account is the resources that they have. But, you know, you don't have infinite staff resources and you don't have infinite budget resources. And the things that the council might see as a priority, it may be different, and they may wanna direct staff differently than what is actually, you know, what we recommend in the plan immediately.
Yeah.
So, you know, Kevin said UDO changes are coming up, maybe the council says, well, no, we don't need to do that. That doesn't need to be the first priority, where, you know, we've clearly identified that as the first priority.
Certainly, thank you.
And we budgeted for it.
Okay, so that takes us through the entire plan, so this is what we want you to look for. So really, if you have limited time, I would focus on the core chapters, so that's 4, 5, 6, and 7. I would review under 4, review the place type descriptions and the map. Look at the images, are they representative of what you wanna see? Are there any standards that you think are missing? Under transportation, review the transportation policy and recommendations. Review the transportation map. We've already kind of discussed that now, that we need to make some changes and break out and create another map. But also review the street type facilities and make sure they make sense for Westfield. And then connecting it all together, I would focus on the themes and specifically the policy and the action steps. Not really all the lead up or the write up to the lead up, but really the policy statements and the action steps. And then, are we missing anything in the innovative and emerging trends and technologies? And are these the right policies? Because again, we're trying to foretell in the future where technology is going and trying to give some direction to the city on how to be prepared on that. And then in the implementation, review the implementation matrix. Does the priority fit with what Westfield's needs are more in the immediate term? Are the lead agency and key partners correct? Did we leave off any partners? And then, as we say up here, edits go to Caleb by November 14th at, we think, 12 noon or sooner if you get it done before that. We will always take things sooner. And then Caleb, you wanna flip to the next. So things not to worry about, Scribner's errors. I had already found a misspelling in here or something that was missing punctuation. We will catch all that. There are a couple formatting issues. We will fix that. As we talked about, the tab functionality and the hyperlinks are not all fixed and not all there. No picture has a caption right now. We will make sure all those do. As I said, there were red text there. Those are things that we need to still finalize with staff and make sure that we're calling things the right names. We need to fix or create the acknowledgements page and talk to staff on, how we want to handle that. We still have a few blank boxes in here for information that needs to be submitted. And of course, we have to write the executive summary. So those are things that you don't need to worry about and don't need to correct us on unless it's really bothering you.
But it's probably bothering us too.
I'd like to see the executive summary.
Okay.
I mean, that's, honestly, it's, whenever I write, I sent off a 1,200-page report today, hydraulic model, capital improvement asset management plan. I put everything in the executive summary, because that's usually what the council of the board's gonna look at.
Yes,
They're not gonna look at the rest of it.
correct.
And so I wanna make sure everything's in the front, that makes, has the information that kind of encapsulates everything that's in the report.
Yes, that's why we write it last. It's because that's exactly what we do.
So at this point, now that we have this much of it done and structured, we can go and write that and get it to you for review and comment.
So any thoughts, comments, questions?
I'm curious just, and maybe this is a very naive way to look at this, how our feedback can be most impactful, because I feel like the feedback is gonna be more in question form than direction form, right? And so for me, and as we're providing feedback, like in one voice, like what is the best way for us to communicate, like is it, cause I feel like a lot of it's gonna be like still trying to understand the why was something a certain way? And I feel like we're past that now. Or am I mistaken in thinking? That makes sense, what I'm trying to get to, like, I just wanna make sure whatever we're doing is the most direct way to acknowledge our feedback without just creating more questions that obviously, given the time frame, wouldn't necessarily be overlooked, but much like the chart we just looked at, blended and synthesized as opposed to getting to the direct point.
So I think if there are questions, then I would recommend a sit down with staff to kind of go over those and get some clarity on that. I'm just committing staff to.
That's what we're here for. I mean, seriously, that's,
Well, cause I guess that's the point, right? Like, you guys have been, especially Caleb, has been on this every day since it started. And so I just wanna make sure our feedback is what you need it to be, I guess, or my feedback.
It can be, it can be email, it can be phone call, it can be virtual.
Right.
Don't think it needs to be just in person, you need a dedicated
Right.
time, so I can be flexible.
But those questions that you have and that clarification that you want is important because we need you to be comfortable adopting this, not we, but we collectively. Need you to be comfortable with what's in it and what it tells you and the decisions that you're gonna make based off of it when you adopt.
Yes.
you know, and if there's 2 or 3 of you that we can meet together to eyes and ears in the room, that's fine too. We probably need to keep it at that, 2 or 3 at a time, but if it works out to be more efficient for everybody, let's do it.
And certainly if you have questions that aren't clear to Kevin and Caleb, they'll get with us for clarification and we'll make sure that we address it through the plan or get answers back.
So next steps. So comments due, as I said, by 11:14. We have a joint focus group meeting to kind of present the same information on Thursday. Then we have the steering committee meeting on Friday. Patrick and Victor, it's gonna be the same stuff, so maybe you guys have more questions. We will have our public open house on November 20th. That will be from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Westfield, Washington Public Library. And then the adoption process will start on December 8th.
Council introduction.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same, procedurally, it's pretty much the same process that we see for a PUD or PUD amendment. Right, we'll have a council introduction, then it'll go to plan commission for a public hearing and adoption, one of those.
Recommendation.
Do they make a recommendation?
It's a
on it?
recommendation,
Okay,
to
Stand
adopt,
corrected.
not to adopt.
okay, and then back to council for final
Yes.
in January.
It doesn't,
January,
because of all the work we've done, it doesn't hit a workshop, right?
no, heavens, no. I don't think so, I mean, I guess.
So I was gonna ask all
We
my
haven't
questions.
talked about that, but I think these are serving that purpose,
I agree.
so.
So we'll see it at the January,
Yeah, it'd be January 15th or whatever that
Whatever
is.
that
January
meeting is,
or
that's
is it
fall.
December?
Oh, well, I guess we could do, I don't know that we've talked specifically that,
I think we're talking December.
oh, is it December? So, I stand corrected.
I'll just stop talking, cause I don't know.
So
So I mean, the punchline is on
I was
December,
thinking that's what
on
we
December
put on-
29th, you will codify this as law.
I think that's what I put on my calendar, but
Kevin don't
Let
know.
me pull it up, just, I have it, it's me.
Kevin's like,
Go home.
Recreation
They're
housing
done here.
side
Others and then that moving.
or recreation, when there's all these orange areas and yellow
I can't
areas.
wait for the first place type.
I'm asking you. It's just, I
And what?
need third.
Well, I'll look to you.
So,
Thank God for
I
you
don't
that
know,
are
they just
fearless
randomly-
here now, sir.
Public hearing 12:15.
Alright.
so yeah, we can.
Workshop meeting when we, or rather was approved, is to council.
what was that? 12:15.
Yeah, like what are these little random green spots?
Bring your snacks.
Is that gonna be the?
I wish we could have contemplated it,
Yeah.
because it's, it's really, that was gonna end up on the same.
It's gonna be great.
workshop.
I do agree with,
Is there any other business to come before us?
should
It
be
needs to
all
be green.
I just wanna thank you all for your time this evening and your great discussion and questions.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you for your
effort.
work,
This
it's been
is
great. We look forward to
Master
getting your
planning
feedback.
Bible, well done.
So I need a motion to adjourn the council meeting.
So moved.
You're adjourned.
APC.
Oh, you guys don't vote, we do vote. Need a motion to adjourn the APC meeting.
So moved.
So moved. And second, any further discussion, all those in favor, say by saying aye. Any opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned at whatever time it
I'm
is.
questioning you.
8:40.
Whatever time it is.
This is how it always goes.
council members, my preferred process, all you need is a motion, it doesn't need a second or a vote. So that we can-
But I'll just say it anyway.
See, this is what this.
No, don't take
Don't forget your costume tomorrow.
No, let me know, we're gonna take them off.